we need to understand how big the potential it is for your business, right? And then even with that now, you're looking at even the obtainable market, what is realistic, and then break it down. So you're going to have these I think, I'm not sure what the currency is, but say, for example, put in one currency, probably in dollars, right? And have the total addressable market, the serviceable available market, SAM, and then your serviceable obtainable market, the market you can actually obtain. So we don't want to see figures and to say that it could be a few billion, right? But what are you targeting within that market? Is it a few hundred million, for example, hundreds of million? We just like to know the size of that market. So I think that would be all of that. But please look it up. There's quite a lot of information that is available out there on how to define these. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Anwar. Yes, so I think just to build on this, it's really important to be as specific and as practical as possible. So it's helpful to start from the macro, but let us know what it is, what it is that you are able actually to achieve, like what the market that your business that you are able to actually reach. That helps us contextualize things to your specific business. Okay, great. Buntu, we have a question here around one of the Q&As that came through. How does one identify their primary customer? We know that many businesses may have several different types of customers. So what would you say is the primary customer or user? And how can they identify that?
Sure, thanks, Zaha. I know this is a challenge for entrepreneurs as you are hustling, growing your business. You've got multiple pipelines and channels of revenue, and really, the future is untold, and you continue to explore. So this question of primary, the word primary is very important here, because we understand that you're trying in different, you're serving different customers and users, but I think the key here is try not to be multivariate. Try not to be vague. You want to be clear that there's a coherent story that's going on, and there's one customer. And even though all your customers are important, this one is what you're really trying to look for is which one is the most important in the context of my application. So some of the things you can think about in no particular order, but really as an overarching on how do you create coherence, like Dr. Moore alluded to. Firstly is going back to your vision, why you started this business as an entrepreneur. What are your values? This is the foundation that's telling the story of which customer essentially then you choose to serve, and why you serve them, and why that problem is compelling. So I think consult with your vision and mission and your core values in this aspect, in terms of the people that you are serving, which one of them really speaks to this and speak to that world that you want to transform. And then secondly, I would say, when you look at the different aspects of the application, you want to measure on your customers, for example, which one has the biggest market opportunity. When you do that market size, which one is showing the biggest market opportunity, or when it comes to your business model, which one is generating the most revenue for you or driving the most growth for you, or when it comes to impact, which impact is most measurable, and essentially changing the most lives. So once again, these might overlap, of course, across the customers. And maybe it might be difficult to really weigh them, but more often than not, there will be a dominant customer here when you think across these areas for the rest of the application. But if it is challenging to weigh them, then you layer it with your vision and your mission, because that's your North Star. And then lastly, I'd probably connect back. I'm sort of putting this separate as a section of comparison in your application, but your problem, because when you're defining your problem, to make it compelling, to make it inspiring, and to make it measurable, it has to be for a certain customer group. And so once you've defined who your market is and what that problem is, your primary customer should be aligning to that. And so, and that's what making you, gets you out of bed as an entrepreneur, is then that closely linked problem and the customer. And so there will be a customer that comes out that should be largely ticking above all of these boxes.
Thank you, Buntu.
Thank you, Zara.
I'm actually going to go back to you on this question. So if we were using the example of transportation and the ride-hailing business, could you give an example in such a business? Who is the customer? Who is the primary customer for a business that is trying to improve transportation services, especially in the informal sector?
Zara, I'm afraid I lost you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can, yes. Perfect.
Okay. So I was saying I wanted to actually, for the sake of the audience, provide an example. So using the example that Buntu had shared earlier of the transportation sector and the ride-hailing business, could you provide some thoughts on, in such a scenario, who the primary customer would be?
Okay, I mean, that is excellent. It's likely that there's a socioeconomic, shall we say, division, right, in this market. It's quite clear, right? Okay, so you would say income level might distinguish there, right? So it might be a certain income level, for example, already. It might also be age, okay? So you might have an age grouping. It might also be what the person does. So if it's right, is it mainly people who are going to work, market, etc.? All right, so what it is they do in life is also important. It could be mainly at the time of day, it could be somewhere where there are lots of children. So is it school children, for example, that might be part of this? So you already have certain key criteria. So socioeconomic, you have age, you have what it is that they do. Then it depends also on types. Are you having people who are coming? Is it short trips in the city? Okay, or is it people who are coming from sort of peri-urban areas, for example, into the city? So you also have, are they city dwellers or urban dwellers or, suburban dwellers? So you already start having a picture, right, of the kind of person or the kind of target customer that you're looking at already. And that starts to build the profile of your ideal client. I mean, there might be 2 or 3, yes, obviously, but you can pin it down really. That the more you can pin it down, the more convincing and the more likely you are to be able to produce the product and services, and that will come through in terms of, is this business model going to be sustainable and can we scale it up?
Thank you. So I would say, an example also could be, just building on everything Dr. Emwa said, is a primary user in that scenario could be university students who are looking for cheap modes of transportation to get from campus, which might be on the outskirts of town, into the CBD. So to answer that question, you would say my primary users are university going students who live outside, in this case was in Rwanda, outside Kigali. So that helps it to be very specific, and you would have figured that out based on all the factors that Dr. Emwa and Ubuntu provided. So hopefully
May I add on that briefly, Zaha, just a small point?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. To build on, to build on that is, we are giving the profile of the primary customer there as the person who's looking for the ride. However, some of you might be having businesses where you're connecting to customers or connecting to customer groups, and then you're taking a transaction fee on the commission. And so you, in a way, you sort of an Uber model, an Airbnb model, and you might ask yourself which of these is actually my primary customer, because they both matter for you to be giving value to the other one. So I think for example, in the ride-hailing discussion, we've assumed and put forward the argument that the primary customer should be the person who's riding. And that's probably because we like Dr. Moore alluded to, that there's socioeconomic impact to this. So yes, the rider gets more rides, but you're probably helping the person, and that's employment, and that's good, but you're probably helping the person who needs to go get a job or go about their business, and the numbers of those are so much larger. And also when you looked at the problem as I described it, busy space, inconvenient, unsafe, that problem connects to actually the person who's looking for the ride less than the rider, even though the rider is still important. So those are some of the things as well you can think through to distinguish, especially if you're like a connector or a marketplace. Thanks.
Thanks to things are clear. Both you and Dr. Mo have done a great job. So I think hopefully people have a good understanding of that. But let us know in the Q&A and chat function if you need more clarity, and we'll come back to it at another. Okay, so we still have quite a few more questions to go through. So here's one. We have a question around how to identify competitors, in an industry. What are the type of competitors to consider, and how do you go about tackling this question? So Dr. Emo, if I could turn this back to you.
This is quite a great one, because sometimes we look a little bit narrowly, and this is where you need to, and I think very often it's useful to put yourself in the shoes of your potential client, right? Now, before you go into a market, that client or that customer or potential customer is already doing something about whatever problem or issue you're trying to solve. So how are they doing it, right? And how they're doing it is your competition, okay? So your competition may not always be direct competition. So say, for example, the competition is another ride-hailing company, right? It could be, but are they using shared taxi services, for example? Okay, so you need to look at it and say, how is that customer solving that problem, right? Even if it's not even if it's partially solved, and that also starts to tell you what the competition is. Now, competition very often for smaller businesses is also localized. So also look in terms of your geography and how are they dealing with that need within that geography. So geography is very, very important in looking at your competitors. Now, I know very often we say that the data is not available, but as part of understanding the market, you need to actually understand the market in order to produce a service. And what I mean by that is that you focus on your service and your product, right? But you have to be very careful, because you should be focusing on the problem the customer has and how to solve it. And how they solve it is not just, here's the problem. How they solve it is also, how are they right now filling that need, right? And so that is your competition, okay? And the other thing to look is, with some sectors really are, if they're highly competitive, look behind your shoulder and see, are there new entrants coming into the market as well? Okay, and don't forget about the potential of new entrants. So it's really any other thing or service or thing that is helping your potential customer to meet that need, even if it's impartial, that is your competitor. But it has to be somebody who is within that physicality and that same geography, right? It could be, by the way, or not all products and services are actually physical. A lot is technology as well. So you need to find out what are the, is it an app, for example, or is it a service, an online service, and how are they doing it, and how are they dealing with it? For example, in the fintech sector, we can see that, at the margin, the competition was actually something between the banks and the fintechs, right? And sometimes it's not, because it's something totally different. So it depends on what product you are creating.
Great, thank you. Let's see, what are the other questions? So I think it's similar. So maybe Buntu, you can build on this or just add a few additional points. But how do you advise applicants think about their value add and their competitive advantage?
Thanks, Arha. So I mean, this builds on from you understanding your competition, right? When you understand your competition, you want to put across that you have a clear understanding of the industry, whether that's from experience or that you've done your research, and based on what your competitors are doing, where are they, how are they performing against you on some of your benefits and your features. You then want to carve out where's the gap? You know, you want to make it clear in the way that you describe your competitors, that my competitors are in the, for example, you know, it could be another ride hailing and buses and taxis, or maybe going on foot, and so on. And within a region, and then you want to say, you know, this is how they performing against me on time and cost, or say convenience, things like that, user friendliness, or even sometimes things are important is impact. And so and then you carve out and say no one is addressing this problem, you know, of this subset problem in the problem scape. And then that's where essentially you come in and say that's where we are different. That's our value add. In which case, you know, a template or a description that you might be putting across is that we are serving, let's say, you know, if you're serving, you're in the ed tech, for example, online ed tech. In mining companies, you might say that we are serving mining, you know, corporates to upskill their employees, is online, unlike our competitors who take them into classrooms and are 50% more expensive than us. We're able to do this much more affordably online, but while at the same time being more effective, because we give chunk sizes of information that are consumed on your mobile, for example. So right there, you've sort of given a scape of what other people are doing and what others aren't doing that you're doing, that then makes your customers choose you.
Very clear. Thank you, Buntu. All right. Okay. So we also get questions around how to identify what the key risks to a business, are. Like, what do we mean by key risks to a business? So either Buntu or Dr. Emwa, please feel free to jump in here and address this one. If you can provide examples, that will be helpful.
Sure. I'm happy to take a jab at this. Thanks, Zaha. So I think when coming to risks here, what we're trying to understand, I mean, as an entrepreneur, you're trying to downplay the risks, manage the risks while maximizing the upside, the opportunity. And so when we talk about the market size, we talk about the problem and how compelling it is. We're trying to understand what's the opportunity scape here, what's the upside. But on the downside, it's very important for you to outline that you are the ones that will be able to actually get to that upside, and that you've put into place interventions in your business model, in your values, and how you do things that are going to make sure you succeed. And I view risks, business risks, in three categories in general. One is you want to cover, and you want to cover your market risks. So these are the questions that validate, are people willing to buy your product? Is the market going to buy this product? If they don't buy this product, what are you going to do? And so, when you talk about your traction, for example, maybe you are providing an ointment for healing wounds, and it's an antiseptic ointment that is created from some indigenous African plant. And so in the market side, you might be talking about and say, we've got 60% of our revenue or customers are new customers, and then the rest are returning customers. And so this shows that new people that you haven't sold to before in the last 6 months, or ever in the last 6 months, are new people. And so in that sense, you're validating that the market risk is being handled here. And then another group of risks, the second group of risks, is the technology risk or product risk. And here the question is the product going to do what we say it's going to do? Does it work? And so things that you want to overcome here and talk about is things like that maybe your product has been validated by a standards bureau. So in the case of an ointment, you may mention that we've gotten regulation and permits or clinical standardization and testing, clinical testing, even if it's not required. Sometimes these things are required, of course, you'll know in your industry. But even if it's not required, for example, that says our product is 80% efficient or 90% effective, and then we've also gotten feedback from our customers that less than 1% churn of our customers. So this is telling you that somehow your product is working. Then the last risk, which is very difficult, is for investors and partners and generally as entrepreneurs to not only to articulate but to ever get right, is the team risk. So yourself as in terms of the skills that you're bringing as a team, how is that validating that you'll be able to do this? Whether that says, so you might say, some of the risks might be that we need to pivot in the future because we don't know how many African markets may accept an ointment, and we might need to start creating something else, maybe for animals, for example. And then you might want to say, if that's a risk that you've identified, that our team is actually experienced across a wide variety of clinical products. And so we have the skill to pivot if we need to, or cover any of these issues. And as well, again, is in this space is then how do you articulate the alignment of your vision and the chemistry of your team? And I think this is important to bring across, on elements that will show that this business is not going to fall apart. So you might talk about things like governance, that you've got a governance in place and all sorts of agreements with your advisors and your investors that help you to regulate the business in a way that is going to ensure the sustainability. So I'd look at the things that we might face or might go wrong. As you know, Murphy's Law, something will go wrong within these three buckets. And from those, you can then say what you are doing to mitigate them.
Thank you, Buntu. So I wanted to just go back to a few questions before we move forward. So one of the attendees, was a little confused around the primary user. So they were asking, between the rider and the final customer, who is the primary user? So, the answer to that is it depends on the problem that you have articulated you're solving. And depending on the way you envision the problem, what your mission is, that will determine your primary user. So it could be that the problem you're solving is making it easier to increase the incomes of the motor riders, right? That is the problem you seek to solve. You seek to improve their well-being, and you seek to improve their ability to attract customers. So in that case, they are your primary user. But if the problem that you have identified that is worth solving is the ease of transportation for university students, for example, to get from outside the city into the city, then they are your user. So it depends on what you identify as the problem. And that's why Dr. Emwa, for example, spoke earlier to say you need to have a consistent narrative. So building from the problem that you identify, you then put forward a specific solution, and that informs who it is your target audience, because the problem will be different depending on who the audience is. So hopefully that provides a bit more clarity on that. So I just wanted to clarify that before we move forward.
Laura, can I just add to that?
So yes, you may. Yes.
This question is actually quite an important one, and a quick one to give an example is, say for example, you are a Facebook, because very often you may look at your customer as a primary user, and sometimes there's a difference. So say for example, your social media, your Facebook, and you can say that the customers, the primary users are everybody who has a Facebook account. But where's the revenue coming from? Revenues might be coming from big companies who are advertisers. So who's your customer in this situation? So just be clear that sometimes the person who is actually paying for the service, right, and where you're making your money from, may not necessarily be the primary user. Okay, so there might be a differentiation, and I think that's the key thing that Buntu was talking about. So you might have different groups, so it's good to specify them.
Thank you. All right, so Dr. Moore, while you're on, let me actually invite you here. We have, we asking for applicants to describe their business model, and we received questions even here in the Q&A around what is a business model, what is the revenue model. Could you provide some clarity here around the different types and how applicants can think about what their business model is?
Okay, now the business model is something that is quite dynamic. So till now, we've been looking at things, almost in a sort of static way, but it's bringing everything together. So how does everything work in order for you to create a sustainable business model? So it's really articulating what this business looks like. So we can't come into your offices and look at all the various different bits, right? So how do you articulate that into a document? So you start from your purpose. We've talked about that already, okay? And actually, one thing that you might want to look up that I find very useful, I wonder if Ubuntu uses that as well, which is the business model canvas, which we use all the time. And that is a way of making your business come to life. So you start with, what is that unique value proposition right at the middle of it? What is unique about you and special about your product and service, right? And then how do you bring together the customer, right? The marketing channels that you're using, what is the impact on the financials, the people, and your team? So it's all the elements together that come together in order for you to create this product and service and sell it. And sorry, I forgot also the operations. So there's the operations side. So you need to have all those elements together. So you've talked about your client, the market, right? The marketing, how are you going to do the marketing? Operationally, how are you going to produce the product and service? The financial aspect, and finance is also the financing and also the financial model. The team that is going to be part of it. And I don't know, Buntu, have I missed out any key areas here? And it's bringing that all together to form the picture of this thing. And of course, the revenue model is always very important. But I say, for example, make all the other parts coherent and clear, because we know that one thing that you're sure about the revenue model is that nobody ever makes, it could be more, it could be less, but you can't predict, right? Completely. So we know that it's going to be off, but it's the coherence that we are really looking for here.
Great, thank you. So linked to revenue model, business model, there's also, of course, the question of costs. So Buntu, maybe I'll direct this to you. So what are some examples, very specific examples of costs that business will incur?
Thanks, Zaha. So at this point, we're starting to bring together the mechanics of how you're going to be delivering your solution to this market, and how you access it, and essentially achieve your vision. And so, like Dr. Moore is saying, it brings together these different components that paint a picture. And so if we look at the business model from the operation side, the delivery side, this is where essentially you're looking at your costs, right? And of course, it will depend, but what you want to, depend on your industry and kind of business, but what you want to bring in here is, is essentially what contributes 80% of your costs. Because usually, if you use something like the Pareto Principle, so that's a good benchmark, is the Pareto Principle that argues that 20% of your effort gives 80% of the outcome, or 80% of the costs are accounting for, the majority of your inefficiencies. So I think, in largely it will depend, and there's two categories that we can look at. For example, if you're a services business, it probably means that staff are one of your major costs, staff and sales. Because you put staff to deliver, but maybe you're also paying agents, as well as retailers and so on, in order to well, not retailers, but maybe platform services, in order to get your service out there. And so if you look at your staff, for example, if you identify, okay, this is a major cost for me, it's our staff, because we're a services business, and the way that we manage these costs is by leveraging internal skills, or hosting communities around us in order to upskill our employees, because employee training is a key competitive advantage on how we deliver our business. And it's one of the costs within our staffing or HR component. So there you've outlined that it accounts 60% of your costs, because you're a services business, and you've connected it to your value proposition. And one of the things that you're spending in it is training, but you've done something innovative or change, not say traditional here. Instead of paying for courses or traditional learning, you're actually leveraging communities. So for example, if you're in the tech space, you might be leveraging an AI community that meets every month, and then this gets your employees enthused to learn by themselves. Is sort of an example there on how you manage it. Alternatively, is also if you're a product business. If you're a product business, generally the majority of your costs are going to come from your cost of goods, or when you buy your supplies. And then everything on the margins is how you're running your business above that. So you buy and you're selling. Somewhere in between, you might be transforming it. There might be costs there as well. But let's say that one of your major costs is buying your product. So if we go back to the ointment example, where you sourcing indigenous plants as one of your inputs, and there's a supplier that gives this to you packaged. You might then say one of the way that we're reducing costs is by making sure that our quality assurance process minimizes defects to below 0.5. Or 5 per thousand, for example. And this is a reduction of cost, because every time you have a defect, it comes back to you. That's a wasted cost of goods. Another way that you might be, lowering your cost there is that you can say, our major cost is buying these from our suppliers, and our suppliers sell them traditionally at this price, but we have gone into a renegotiation with them and put together a long-term contract that essentially, is good for them, because then we, in a way, buying bulk, even though it's a little bit of a time, and you're creating a long-term partnership. And because of that, we have renegotiated a price that's 20% lower. And that's how we're managing the cost in this area, and giving us another competitive advantage in the financial sort of space and operation space of your business model. Thanks, Zaha.
Thank you very much. Great. Okay, so here's another question. In the interest of time, we'll have to move a bit quickly, but we've got to, how do I know whether I'm pre-seed, I'm seed, I'm Series A? Dr. Emwa, can I ask you to just quickly give some insight? This should be an easy one. You sort of know whether pre or seed, but
Okay.
Themselves.
Well, let's start from Series A, actually. Series A is really when you are actually starting to scale, when you are getting traction, when you have you're going out to the venture capitalists, and you have A, B, C, and D, right? Now, before that, when you're starting from scratch, you have your pre-seed and your seed. So pre-seed is, when you have, family and friends and own funds, okay? Now, seed funding is when you're probably going out a little bit, people who probably don't know you all that well. So you're having angel investors who are coming to who are helping to fund you at the very beginning. And so your traction may not, you might start having a bit of sales, but your traction is still a little bit weak. By the time you're moving to Series A, you must have an MPV. You must have something that actually works, and you're looking. What you're looking at is how to scale. So when you are starting off and you're not quite sure, you're testing the market, maybe you're selling this, you're changing your product a little bit, you haven't gotten anywhere near the Series A. So you look at Series A, B, C, and D as the levels of scaling, funding for scale, right? So you have the product. The product is the product is clear. It's working. It's in the market. But you need money for marketing, for technology, and all of that. Okay, so I think that's the key thing that you need to look at. Pre-seed definitely is family and friends. By the time you're getting to seed, you can get angel investors on board. These are people who will trust in you. Your product or service might not be exactly, you might still be testing it a little bit. You might have customers or not really have customers. But by the time you're getting Series A, you absolutely, without a doubt, have your product and service, and it's really funding to scale. I hope that is clear enough, and maybe Ubuntu can add to that.
I think Ubuntu is passing on that. Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'll pull Ubuntu
I
in,
think that
however,
was covered. Thanks.
Okay, great. Buntu, I will pull you in for the question around the income statement. So we saw questions in the survey around, how does one put together an income statement? So if you can maybe walk through what an income statement really looks like, and the key elements to include, and then I'll talk about some of the technical issues that some people may have experienced here.
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Aha. I think here, if I can quickly maybe share a template for us just to cover some of the pieces, I'm going to share my screen. So in basic terms, if we're looking at the income statement, there are a couple things that you want to cover, or say an income statement is broken up into, and really the income statement is what you can use to look at historic performance financially, tell the story of your business, how you've been doing with your traction and so on. But also you use that to project into the future. Somewhere in between is then the state of the business where you're at now. And there's other documents that link out of the income statement, like your cash flow and balance sheet. But really the income statement tells the story over time, or that should once again be coherent on your traction and your growth strategy, right? But if you want to start looking at some of these components, it's made up largely of revenue. So you want to list in here all your revenue income line items, and generally you want to put the things at the top that are highest in some sort of priority, and in revenue that would be the highest priority, the highest income, right? So you've got, for example, here some revenue stream one, some product sales, maybe you've got admin fees, and depending on how you do your pricing, it will depend on how you put these pricing, and your business model will depend on what line items you put here in your revenue. And then another piece here, particularly for product businesses, is cost of goods. So that's material. If you're packaging it to yourself and so on, all those things will come in here, because then you immediately subtract them from your revenue, and then you get your gross margin, which is your income before your fixed expenses. So at the top is your income, and then down below that, next thing is now your expenses, starting with cost of goods, which are your variable expenses, meaning that as you sell, the expenses change. And then secondly is then the fixed expenses, which are your overheads. So here is everything else that you need to do in order to deliver your product. So you might be got rent in here. You might have things like depreciation if you're buying equipment. You might have debt that you pay back to the bank if you buy equipment. Your staff here and your salaries are coming in here. and so on. So as an early stage business, this is a, quite a useful tool to look at. You got to be looking at this every day, seeing how it changes, and you're planning back and forth. And these are some of the items that you might have in there: software, travel, computers, and so on. And then you're able to sum up all your expenses. And once you subtract that from your gross margin, you end up with your income, you end up with your operating margin, and then after that, you can now start looking at things like tax. So these are the items, things that you subtract below your expenses. Maybe you've got some tax there or some miscellaneous items. And really, at the end of the day, that gives you a net income. And so once you think through these packages, you can then start looking at your invoices and your receipts, and put something like this together. And you can use it going to the past as well as going into the future. Hope that that template suffices. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I think for some people looking at this, they may feel, wow, this is very detailed and I don't have that level of detail. So what I would also just suggest to the attendees looking at this is essentially, we provide a template, which is a more visual representation. So it has a bar chart and it's slightly more high level. We really want to know your trend over time. So you don't need to provide us like a month by month breakdown. Buntu has showed how you get there, which, as you develop, it becomes very important. But at the stage for this competition, it would be helpful to use the template we've provided, which essentially asks you to provide us with your revenue, your expenses, and your profits over time, right? So the most important years you want to feature are your historical years. So years, we want 3 years of revenue. Projections are helpful. If you don't have projections yet, not critical. It's helpful if you do have them to show us what you think you'll be earning, next year, the year after. What you think your costs will be. So you provide it at a high level, right? At a high level, what are your revenue? At high level, what are your costs as in sum? So we're asking for the summation of it. But what Buntu showed, which was helpful, was how you can get to the sum total in a structured way. So hopefully that doesn't overwhelm you. It's a building block to the summary version that we request in the application. Okay, before we move forward, I also want to just go back to the question around pre-seed and seed Series A. So there's certainly one element which is around your traction and your growth. I think another way to quickly identify for yourselves whether or not you're pre-seed or seed, for example, is, as Dr. Moore said, if you're pre-seed, you're mainly receiving funding from friends, family, you're self-financed, you haven't necessarily received formal external investment. Once you reach the seed and Series A level, at this point, you will know you're at that stage because you are talking to people who are actual investors, right? Who might be taking things like equity shares within your business for the money that they give you. So at that point, it becomes far more structured. And such individuals or firms, for example, if you're looking at a VC firm to raise your Series A, will consider many of the factors that Dr. Emwa shared, right? So they'll be looking at your traction, they'll be looking at your product viability, your team, etc. But for our purposes, we just want to understand whether or not you have had experience raising money formally, just so that we can contextualize the business. However, we have had finalists who are at the seed stage. So please do not feel you need to be, at the pre-seed stage. Please do not feel you need to be seed or Series A, B, C, D in order to become a finalist. We just want to understand what your experience has been in terms of raising financing. So if you've never formally raised finance, then you are most likely pre-seed. So I would just say, for the sake of the application, that's the way to think about it. if you have, received funding from a venture capitalist firm, for example, and they've taken equity in your company, you're most likely at the series level, right? This is a very crude and high level way to understand it, but I just wanted to simplify it because I know that there are quite a few questions around this. So hopefully that gives you a bit more clarity. And then also the thing to keep in mind is that a seed company in the kind of traction that maybe a seed or a Series A company in San Francisco has is actually quite different from what may be on the continent. So it varies from market to market. If that, like the traction, the revenue levels you have will vary, but most importantly, for the purposes that we are asking for, it's how formal has your fundraising process been? That's essentially all we're seeking to get out from that question. So hopefully that provides a bit of explanation for those who are a bit anxious about that question. Okay, great. So I will go back to sharing my screen. I know that we're a little over time, but we are getting moment quickly. All right, so impact. We've received some questions around impact. Dr. Emma, I was hoping I could actually pull you in here to speak about this. A lot of people have asked, in the survey, what do we mean by impact? What do we mean by community? Could you shed some light on this? What would you be looking for in a response here?
This is really very important when you talk about impact. There are many definitions of impact, but I think it's safe to look at the UN SDGs. So that's to say, how are you solving any of the UN SDGs? I'll give an example. Say, for example, you're looking at employment and you're saying that we are creating jobs, okay? Now, if you are hiring the top talent in in your country or your city, those are people who are going to get jobs in any case, right? Then that might not be your where you're creating impact, okay? Because yes, you are hiring people, but in any case, they would get jobs. But say, for example, you are hiring people who normally may not, get jobs. For example, areas where you have problems with youth employment, then your impact may be you could then use jobs, right, as your impact. But the SDGs are a very important way to look at and to see if you're creating impact. So that is to say that what you output from the organization is not just the fact that you're creating a sustainable business, that is a business that is going to carry on and grow, but you're actually improving the lives of people in some measurable form or fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I was struggling to put my mic back on. Thank you, Dr. Moore. I think that was very clear. So maybe just quickly on this, I'll actually turn it to my colleague, Michael. So we have a question in the application where we ask individuals to show a slide or an image that can depict their future plans. Do you have insights on the type of image or slide that they could use to do so? And again, just stressing to all listening, it is an optional feature. But
yeah, thanks, Sarah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think for the future plan, it's very important to have a goal. So no matter it's 5 years or 10 years goal. So for this goal, it's important to be quantifiable. So you need to have numbers in it or percentage. For example, percentage of markets you're trying to acquire or number of users you're trying to acquire. And secondly, you need to be, the goal need to be qualitative as well. So, number of free users, number of pay users. And lastly, the goal needs to be also socially impactful. So you try to explain, on top of earning money, on, getting revenues or acquiring market share, so what kind of social impacts that you are creating. So I think the second thing is if you have a goal for your future plan, and then you need to explain how to achieve it, right? What's the way to achieve it? And finally, there's a hints. So you always loop it back to your mission, vision, and value. So I just give an example. For example, for the ABH Africa's Business Hero competition. So we have a 10 years goal. So 10 years we want to identify 100 heroes across the continents. And we tell the story by, putting them on the show on like a series episode and broadcast across the continent and internationally to inspire millions. And then we build this network and community, and through collaboration, we try to benefit more and more people and building up the ecosystem. So that basically is an example that we're coding ourselves, for the future plan.
Thanks, Michael. While I have you here, I'm gonna also direct this one to you. So people want to know, what kind of answer are we looking for to the question, how would they use the funds?
Yeah, I think this is very important question because during the semifinal, the round two interviews and the finale, I often heard the judges ask these questions to the candidates. So I think there are two key things I would say. One is be truthful. So very importantly that you are not making this up because you must think about it and how to use the fund before you apply. Secondly, be relevant. So you're not using the fund to buy a house. You're not using a fund to buy a yacht or you buy a car. So be relevant to your business. How do you want to grow your business using the fund to the next step, to the next stage, and always be mindful about what you answered before because that two questions are actually correlated because your future plan link it to the fund that you are trying to get and use. So yeah, so that's basically my suggestions.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, so before we move on to some of the general FAQs, and then also I bring you back in to talk about the selection process and the benefits, I just want to emphasize some key tips around the business deep dive. So please remember that it is completely optional to upload a photo about the problem, solution, and future plans. We know that some of you find the word limits a bit constraining. So the option to upload a photo is really just that. It's only if you feel visuals may capture what you're trying to say better because you weren't able to do so via text to the extent that you would like, but it's optional. So please don't stress about whether or not you have an ideal photo. You do not need to upload one. It does not impact your scoring. It's just if you feel that might be a more powerful way to supplement what it is you're saying. Um, and again, I think I've already shared this when I talked about the founder profile. If you're having some technical issues, definitely email info@africabusinessheroes.org. Ensure you save frequently, try and refresh, ensure you are also using one window at a time to avoid any issues. Um, so at this point, we will go into some of the we'll actually talk about the video introductions quickly. So I know that this is a section that people struggle with. So we have made some updates to this section to make it easier for you. You should have received an email today with a tutorial video that shows you how we've adapted this page to make it simpler. So you can either select the very specific section you want to upload a video for. It will take you to this page. You can upload your self-introduction. You could also go to the team introduction section, for example, if that is ready to upload that video. Um, if you have all three ready and you're ready to go, you can simply click this button. Once you're done uploading everything, you can come back to this page to check whether it has saved. If it has, you will see this green tick box. So it's very important. The video section is an opportunity for us to get to know who you are, to get a chance to meet a team member or team members. It can be one, it can be more than one. and your customer, at least one customer. We want to get a chance to understand how your business is creating impact, how it's affecting people, and why people either want to work with you, so for example, your team member, or why customers are buying a service or a product from you. So this is a required component of the application. We've gotten some questions around whether or not it's required. It is. It gives our judges a great way to put a face and a personality behind the text that they are seeing. So please, we hope you have fun with it. So I think I've just answered it. It is required. We get to see your energy and passion. So have fun with it, but take it seriously. And we hope that your team, as well as your customers, enjoy the process. I've already shared what the content will be. I will ask Dr. Emwa, who was a judge last year and watched some videos, what were some of the videos that stood out to her the most? What made a good video? And what were you looking for as you watched them?
Hi, Zaha. So Dr. Emwa does seem to have dropped off here. Something urgent called for her.
That's fine.
But I'm happy to give an overview.
I'll turn this to Michael, who watched quite a few videos last year, as well. So maybe Michael, you can share a little bit around, the videos that stood out to you, what you felt made them special.
I think first impression is very important because judges are looking at a lot of videos, a lot of texts, and then oftentimes they will look at the videos first to get a kind of impression of who is the applicant, and then like you said, match the profile with the face. I think the video becomes very very first impression to the judges. So I think the video is extremely important. So, but I also agree with Zahar. Let's don't put too much pressure on yourself for making the video, because it's going to be a fun part, right? Making a video and to impress somebody else, and just think of if you are getting married, you're trying to propose, and then you're trying to make a video to impress someone else. So just have fun with it, and dress nicely. Think about the background, and what you're shooting, using the nice background, and also maybe you can also draft some script. Maybe point form is fine. So, and then just use your own language, to talk about the things you are very familiar with, your business, your co-founders, your customers. So yeah, have fun with it.
Thanks, Michael. I saw some questions coming in as you were speaking. Each video has to be a minute. Please do not exceed that. Each video should be a minute. So in total, all 3 videos come to 3 minutes. So please try and adhere to this. If you submit one video that is, far over that, it will be disqualified. So it should be a minute long. If it's 5 seconds over, that's fine. But please do not try and submit 3 videos that are 3 minutes long each. That won't work. So hopefully that answers that question. It's meant to just be a brief introduction, capture the salient, most important points. We put sample videos. So if our past finalists were able to do it, you certainly can do it as well. So please try and watch those videos to get some insights, and hopefully that will give you some inspiration. So we got questions around, do I need to include all my employees and team in the video? No, not at all. Many of our past finalists, past applicants just have one team member, and that is okay. We just want to hear from at least one individual from your team, why it is they work at the company, what it is they have gained working at the company, and to understand what it is that motivates them to come to work. Are they also passionate about the problem that you're solving? And linked to this, we get questions around whether employees need to share their qualifications. No, they really don't. We just want to know, it would be helpful to know their role. So they could say, for example, my name is Zahra. I'm the Partnerships and Program Manager at Africa Business Heroes. but they don't need to share all their qualifications. They don't need to share their, educational background. We just want to know what it is they do at the company and why do they do it? And, what has the impact of working at the company been? All right. Okay. We also get questions around whether, you can upload a new video, whether you can replace the current video. You most certainly can. You simply need to log back in, go to the video section, file, and it will replace the file that is there. So that is no problem at all. You can do that. Linked to this, we've gotten some questions around whether you can edit the application if you've submitted already. You can. Before the deadline, June 21st, you can log back in, edit, just make sure you save. And once you have made all your edits, submit again. So you're more than welcome to do that. And hopefully that clarifies things. All right, so still on the video introductions issue, we've got questions around if the videos were recorded in French, do they need to be translated into English? If you are submitting in French, so that means you selected French as the language you would be applying in, you do not need to translate. However, if you selected English, the application is in English, but your videos are in French, at that point, you do need to ensure that you have subtitles or that you translate it. Okay, so linked to this, we've gotten questions around how you can overcome language barriers. Perhaps your customer or your team member does not speak English or French fluently. So they can record in their native language, but we just want you to add subtitles in either English or French, depending on the language you're applying in, so that our judges can understand. And there are tools online that should be able to allow you to do this. Do your videos need to be professionally filmed? No, they do not. Most of our applicants just use their phone. We ask you record, use it in a horizontal fashion so that we can see you clearly, but they do not need to be professional. You could even use your laptop to do the recording. And yeah, they just need to be authentic. Again, we want to see your passion and your energy. And we've got questions around, what you should do if you cannot upload your video. So you can also upload a link to your video. So you could upload your video to YouTube, for example, or to Google Drive, so long as it is viewable by third parties. So it cannot be a private link that is restricted or that needs a password. So long as it is viewable, you can upload your video link. If you have tried all of that, manually uploading, putting a link and it's not working, you can email us to let us know the issue and we will try to help you. All right, so Dr. Emo has gone now, but we've got questions around the key things judges look out for. So they look to see that you have market traction. They look to see that you as a founder, you have leadership, that you have that you are driven and passionate about what it is you're doing, and that the solution you're providing is competitive, right? There is something that is unique about it and that creates value add. So these are some of the key things they look out for. Michael, I'll turn this one to you. So, what are the businesses most likely to be selected? We've gotten questions around this, and is social impact important?
Yeah, the first question, we're inclusive. So any business, not only like tech related, agriculture, healthcare, education, business with traction and with social impact are likely to be selected, and also, be sustainable as well. So yeah, so.
Great, yeah. So I think Michael answered it well. I won't expand on that further. Michael, again, you're here. So what are some of the benefits of applying? And if, an applicant does not become a finalist, are there any benefits at all?
Definitely, because, when I look at the pool, and today we have a survey that a lot of people, they have no problem. Only 1% of the participants, they have no they have problem with the founder's profile, but there are 59%, of the participant, they have the problem with the deep dive, business deep dive. That means, a lot of people, they probably don't really understand their own business in terms of, financial status, market traction, team management. So I think, to go through this application process is actually a very good exercise for them to get a more better understanding of their own business. So to similar to like a self-diagnostic tool, for the business. And one more thing is, once you complete the application, and the judges will give you customized feedback based on the answers that you put into the application form. So this is going to be very valuable because, if you do that, because the judges normally are very experienced in and also know business operation pretty well. So after they seeing your application, your real case, and then they give you customized feedback, it's going to be very helpful, for you to consider and improve your business.
Great. Thank you. So yeah, just to really emphasize, you will get feedback, right? So regardless whether you become a finalist, you will be given feedback that hopefully will help you think through your business and how to improve. And as Michael, shared, the application form itself is designed to help you think through and structure some of your business materials so that when you are pitching to other investors, that can be helpful for you. So you can download the application after the deadline. Someone asked about that, and so you will have all that material. The question, you'd have spent a lot of time on the application, and we want to be sure you have the records. So you have your answers, and you can leverage them for other applications. You can leverage them for pitches, in improving your pitch decks. So we think that there are many benefits of applying. And then also, if you submit an eligible and complete application, you stand the opportunity to become part of the wider Africa Business Heroes community. Michael, so if a candidate does not become a finalist, can they reapply? And maybe you can share a little bit about some of our finalists and how many times they've applied and joined.
Yeah, I heard, one of the finalists, top 50 finalists, they applied 3 times. So this is the third time she applied. So I think, yeah, the answer is yes. They can reapply as long as the price is existing. So, but yeah, one advice is to show progress.
Yes, that is very important. We got a question, Michael. So let me turn it to you. Small businesses, please address this.
So which question?
Do we consider small businesses? Do small businesses stand a chance?
Definitely, as long as it's meeting our eligibility requirement, like 3 years existence, 3 years revenue, and being an African as a founder.
Yes, small businesses stand a big chance. Jack Ma, who founded this program, often says small is beautiful. So we welcome small businesses to apply. You just have to meet our criteria. And linked to this, Michael, are applicants from rural areas, do they stand a chance?
Yeah, definitely. We're inclusive, and so this year, according to the application status, that we have over 40% of the business, they operate in rural area, which is one of our key objectives, to attract more business to apply and more business to go through to the next steps, which they are operate or focus on rural areas.
Okay, thank you. All right, this is a tricky one for you. Why is our application form so long?
Yeah, I think to become a hero, that takes resilience, and that takes patience. So I think the application long with a reason, because this is also a self-reflection for your business and how much you understand your business, how much you understand your markets and customers. So this is a self-reflection exercise. At the same time, we also need to understand you more in order to make a right decision. So I think that's why the application is so long. And to be honest, itself is a screening process.
Yeah. Indeed, and as I mentioned, Michael's also shared, it's really aims to help provide you with an opportunity to introspect and think about your business and think about your yourself and what it is you're doing. So it's designed in order for us to get as much information as we can. At the end of the day, we're providing a grant. We're not taking equity, it's not investment. And so we want to be sure that you're going to leverage those funds in a meaningful way. So the application form allows us to do that. All right. Michael, would you like to talk through the selection process? We've gotten some questions around what happens after they submit.
Right. So we have a several rounds of screening. The first, after you submit the application, so we will have our first round judges to read through the application, and then we'll score each of the application, and then based on the ranking, and then we will select the top 50 and put them through to the second round. Second round will be a video interview for 1.5 hours, and one applicant will facing two judges. So and then they will score they will score the applications after the interview, and then move them to the third round. Basically, the top 20 from the top 50 will enter into the due diligence process. And after the due diligence, we will have the semifinal to select 10 finalists from the top 20, or we don't know how many were left after the due diligence, but eventually we will select the top 10, enter into the grand finale.
Great. So hopefully that explains it. We did get an additional question around the due diligence and what that really entails. So at that point, PwC is going to verify the information you've provided, which is why we put in the guidelines that it's very important for you to be honest. So, if you have stated that in 2018, your revenue was $1 million, they're going to ask for your financials to actually look through and confirm that your revenue was indeed $1 million. So it's important for you to be honest. As we mentioned, small is fine. So please don't feel the need to exaggerate, because if you make it to the top 20 stage, PwC is actually going to verify all your information. So if you state, for example, you were registered in X country, they're going to double check, make sure that your certificate is correct. They're going to make sure that the revenue figures you've put are true. If you say, for example, you have 10 team members, but really in reality, you only have 2, they're going to cross-check all that information. So that is what the due diligence is all about. Okay, all right. Michael, I think this one is also for you. Will the finale pitch be online or held physically? And will it be the 5-minute pitch like there was in 2019?
Yeah, that really depends on the COVID situation. So last year we did a completely online pitch, for the grand finale. This year we'll play by ear, but look at the current situation. I think to host a physical finale is not very likely.
But maybe I'll also just provide some clarity as well to this. So last year we used the hybrid event. So our finalists pitched from their home countries in a studio, but it was online. So we weren't all physically together, but they were able to pitch from a studio and have somewhat of a formal experience. And so again, we will monitor the situation. COVID protocols are most important for us. So we'll adhere to them, but to the extent that we can create a engaging experience, we certainly will. Cool. All right, so a quick question, we've got ones around, can I send my applications to the ABH team for review and feedback? We cannot review your applications, but, part of what we provide you is the opportunity to download your application form. So you can download a blank one, type in your answers, and then share it with your mentors, with your colleagues who can give you feedback. We as the team cannot do that, but you can get feedback from your colleagues and from your mentors. We've gotten questions around, can I submit more than one application? The answer is, if you are applying for different businesses, all of which meet the criteria, then yes, technically you can. You can submit more than one application for the same business. So if each business is legally registered, it's 3 years old, it has 3 years of revenue, and you are the founder of all these different businesses, then yes, you can go ahead and submit more than one, but you can't just submit 3 applications for the same business. Can you edit your application? Yes, before the June 21st deadline, you can. As I mentioned, you just need to log back in and you can access your entire application, make any edits, ensure you save once you do, and submit once you finally made all the edits that you wish to. All right. We've run out of time. I know we weren't able to answer every single question, but hopefully we answered a majority of them. If you still have questions, there are a range of ways you can contact us. I recommend going on our live chat, which is when you go onto our website, you should be able to see a chat function. You can talk to our support heroes. They're very helpful, willing to help, and they will be able to answer various questions for you. If you email them, if you message out of office hours, you can email at info@africabusinessheroes.org. You can also WhatsApp us. You can call us. So we provide a range of ways for you to engage with us. And so we hope that although we couldn't answer every single question, you feel comfortable to reach out via the means that I have put here. And yeah, we will be happy to support to the extent possible. We've gotten a few questions about whether or not we can share the recording. Unfortunately, we had a technical issue, so we couldn't record from the very beginning, but we will share recording of the sections that we were able to record, and we will share this document as the questions that we answered, the FAQs with you. So hopefully that will provide you with some clarity. Thank you all so much for attending. Michael and Buntu, you can turn on your cameras. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon and evenings with us. Buntu and Michael, are you still around? Great. Any final words from you as we wrap up?
Buntu, please.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Michael. Thanks, Zaha, and thanks, everybody. I do want to wish you all the best, and also remember, in everything, I think mostly what we're highlighting here, as a hero, you as an entrepreneur, you're taking on responsibility, a burden to solve a problem. That's not, that's not driven, there's no requirement for you to do this, but you choosing to take on something for the better good of your community or the African continent and society. And just want to say that really, we want to celebrate you, and that when you're answering these questions, pour out from your heart, pour out from why you're doing this, and let that, tell your story and let that connect with the judges, because your story is, and why we're doing this is, want to celebrate you as a hero, because we need more of you and to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. So thanks for applying. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. And I'll drop my email. I'll be happy to help if you need some more support. Thank you so much, Zaha and Michael, for this session.
Yeah, thank you, Buntu. And sorry, go ahead, Zara.
No, go ahead, Michael. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Buntu. I think, thanks everybody for the time and then stay so long with us, and then because we know we're overrunning quite a lot of times, right? But yeah, but still, like, majority of you still staying online with us. yeah, I think it's beneficial, for you guys to go through this exercise, and then your ABH journey is already started. Once you get into the application, so I think most of the questions we also get from the investment, from the mentors, from the business leaders. So I think by answering this question, by thinking through how to answer this question, by doing research on how to cater these questions are itself is a learning process, and is itself is an improvement process. So no matter if you can get to the next round or to get to the finalist, but I think it's going to be beneficial. And also welcome to join the community. I think we're going to continue to think about how to add value to the community by bringing in, mentors, investors, business leaders, to give advice to the community, and make this networking happen, make this collaboration happen. So this is what we continue to strive, you will strive for, and we continue to think of, new ways to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. We will be in touch. Please check your emails, check your spam folders, because we sent you an email today. We will send another one on Monday with a link to this video. And in the meantime, and we hope to see you guys all submit and get to the finish line. All right. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day and a great weekend.